We are in a very difficult period, not only in American labor history, but in America. And we have to ask this question. In this moment of unparalleled prosperity that has been given to us by a capitalism that seems to be going onward and upward, and there's no answers, there's no ending. You have to ask this question. Are working people better off in this prosperity? Are the workers, of the people who work in the mines and work in the mills and the offices, who are in the professions, who work in the hospitals, who make the government run, are they doing better or are they doing worse in this unparalleled prosperity that we have had allegedly since 1993? If you answer the question yes, they are doing better, that this is an unparalleled prosperity, then you have reason to do several things. One would be to support the next Democratic candidate for president, who will promise to continue that unparalleled prosperity. Two, you want to get in bed with the boss, because if you get in bed with the boss, you'll do better. And three, you will not worry about what's coming ahead too much. But if you answer the question no, you will have to look at the following facts. Despite the fact that we have been told that there are 6 solid years of prosperity, the real wages of the American worker continue to slide. 44 million working people do not have health care benefits. And for the first time in the statistics that have been given out about this, professional and technical people have now revealed that they too do not have health care benefits. 1/6 of the population, and it's not all the working poor. Sizable sections of what may be called the working middle class are suffering from lack of health care benefits. And those of us who have health care benefits, what do we have? Who in this room has no deductibles, no co-payments, and if you get sick, not 20% of an operation, not 20% of a long-term stay in the hospital? Who in this room has that? Well, you see, the point about health care is that even in the health care that we've got, it's shit. We don't have health care. The Germans have health care. The Greeks have health care. And I'm going to tell you a little story. I slipped in Athens, Greece 10 days ago on the bathroom floor, and I needed stitches in my arm. And I walked into an emergency room, and I didn't have a card, I didn't have this, I didn't have that, I didn't have a translator, and I pointed to my arm, and they stitched up my arm, and I got up out of the table, and I walked out. Do you have that in Springfield? Athens, Greece, this is a country which are poor like church mice. They have 22% unemployment. And they can afford to take a stranger, stitch up his arm, send him out, and not charge him with anything, not make him fill out a form? We do not have health care, even if we have insurance. It comes out of our pocket, it's incomplete. Dental care is crap in most plans. We don't have really fully covered medical care. And I'm telling you, as an old steel worker, I worked in the plant in 1960. 365 days coverage, full hospitalization, full surgical benefits in the contract, no co-payment plan, no nothing. 100%. I had 2 children on that plan. What I'm saying to you is that prosperity or no prosperity, in some respects, we are no better off than we were, and in many ways worse off than we were many years ago. And one of the questions that we don't seem to be able to ask ourselves as a people, I'm not talking about you personally or me personally, is why is it that in other countries which are poor or smaller or not as developed or don't run the world like we seem to run, that people can have decent health care and in most cases, even if they're unemployed, decent protections, and we can't. Secondly, you should be remembered that 4.3% unemployment rate is bogus. Bogus, folks, bogus. As my 15-year-old daughter would say, bootleg. And why is it bootleg? Because we are the only country in the advanced capitalist world, only country in the advanced capitalist world, that if you work 1 hour a week for wages, you are counted as employed. Other countries, they calculate. If you work 20 hours or 15 hours, they take it as a percentage of the work week and they calculate it as a part of the unemployment figure. So when you say that Germany has a rate of unemployment of 11%, and France has an unemployment rate of 12%, and Spain has an unemployment rate of 22%, the reason is not because they are only so far behind the United States in development, but it's because they have a different method of calculation. Every part-time, contingent, and temporary worker in the United States is counted as fully employed, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And that has been true for a very long time. There are 2 reasons that, generally speaking, we've fallen behind. One of the reasons is that the welfare system, the social safety net, that our parents, and I'm speaking, by the way, personally, I'm talking about my mother and my grandparents, fought like hell to achieve, that social safety net is so full of holes that you can go through it with no trouble. Which the welfare reform, they use the word reform. The Welfare Butchery Act that said that if people are on welfare, they should be made to work as a condition of gaining benefits, and the objective of the act is to push people off of welfare. Now, every statistical survey shows that most people who are on aid to families of dependent children and every other program wanted good jobs. They wanted to work decently. But what are they doing in most states? Wisconsin, New York, I don't know about Illinois, you can tell me about that. They are pushing people off of welfare and putting them on minimum wage jobs with no child care, with no training, with no education, with no real opportunity. They are replacing public employees making $8, $9, $10, $11 an hour with people making $6 an hour in New York State. They have destroyed the municipal employment of low-wage workers who became somewhat, moved up the ladder with the welfare reform. We've now discovered that there are 9, in this great prosperity with no unemployment, 4.3% unemployment, that there were 9 million people ready to take minimum wage jobs. But if you force them onto minimum wage jobs, you can't raise the general level because you have to raise the bottom. This labor movement went along with it. We were silent in the welfare reform struggle of 1996, and since then have continued to be silent, as if we really supported the idea of putting 9 million more people, which is 8%, 7.5% of the labor force, into the labor force so as to push wages down, forcing them to work at minimum wages. This is fundamental economics. You have a reserve army of labor, and you put them into the market, and what happens to wages? They depress. That's a no-brainer. And the second reason, and I must say this, and I have an honorary withdrawal from 2 industrial unions, one the steel workers and the other the oil, chemical, and atomic workers union. Both of them very strong unions in the past. The labor movement has not called the bluff of the corporations. It has been intimidated by threats of globalization. The big word is globalization. We have globalization, ergo, therefore, you must shut up, sit down, and negotiate for what they tell you can have. Because otherwise the plant's going to leave. There is globalization. We heard this from our Haitian sisters. That is beyond doubt. But in most of the industries where the threat was made of globalization, it is not like the garment industry or the electronic parts industry. There really hasn't been that much globalization. Globalization is an ideology that is organized for the single purpose of depressing wages and weakening the labor movement. Somebody said before on this platform, you may not have heard it, but I want to repeat it. It's not so much about money, it's about destroying the labor movement. Oh, sure, it's about money in the long run, but it's basically about getting this labor movement to lie down and workers to be increasingly non-union. I said From the Ashes of the Old, the book that I could not bring because it's unfortunately sold out. It's going into paperback. It'll be out in the spring, I mean. I said in The Ashes of the Old that the fact of the matter is that the unions have decided, and I don't mean individual unions, that their best bet is to collaborate with the employers in the benefit of their workers. And I said, that's a mistake. Mother Jones, who you're honoring tonight, Mother Jones believed in the class struggle. She believed the interests of the workers and the interests of the employers was irreconcilable. There were irreconcilable differences. We could not reconcile ourselves with General Electric, which has destroyed, in effect, the unions in most of the northern cities that they had plants. General Motors, which has a 2-tier wage system in the automobile plants, and don't tell me I'm wrong because I am actually studying that right now. I'm the official historian of a major local of a GM plant, which has a 2-tier wage system in the plant. That, in fact, as unions have decided to collaborate in all sorts of quality of work-life stuff and all the rest of that, what has happened is they've gone down, down, down. Let me get to one more point, which is in the public interest, is education. Where is the labor movement? You're going to hear this as a refrain through the next couple of minutes. Where is the labor movement as governors, Republican and Democrat, convert higher education into vocational schools? And I don't mean community colleges. There's a role for technical schools. There's a role for, for people getting skills and so on. That's not what I'm talking about. But all of higher education is now being converted into the corporate interest. We, as the taxpayers, we as working people, are paying subsidies to corporations to do the training that they should be doing. Meanwhile, the schools, the higher education, the curriculum is being narrower and narrower so that the humanities and social sciences, so that critical understanding as a part of the curriculum is being destroyed. I've just completed a book called The Knowledge Factory, Dismantling the Corporate University and Creating True Higher Learning, in which I expose the degree to which corporations have taken over one after another board of directors, one after another curriculum, one after another groups of faculty, getting rid of people who have critical understanding like Bob here by paying them off nickels and dimes and bringing in people who are part-time, temporary, and contingent faculty. Destroying the whole academic system. Where is the labor movement? Addressing the question of the destruction of the academic system. And then let's get to the elementary and the secondary school system. I don't have to tell a sophisticated audience like this, but there may be some people who have forgotten. The American labor movement was not born on wages and hours. It was born on the fight for free public education. That workers' children should get 6 grades of schooling, minimum 18, 30, not 28, the program of the working men's parties. You should excuse the working men's parties. They didn't call themselves working people's parties. And it was the unions, the early unions, that fought for free public education in places like Massachusetts and everywhere else. We are watching the dismantling of free public education. They call it charter schools, they call it vouchers. They haven't gotten to it yet. The schooling that kids are getting is not rigorous, it's not critical. The equipment is not there. They're farming things out to private companies. They're giving credit card corporations access to high schools, Pepsi Cola. What the hell is this? And we have to ask the question, what does it mean to dismantle public goods, especially educational system, to the labor movement, to working people, to their opportunities and to their aspirations to a decent life? It means everything. It means that if you don't toe the line of the corporation, you're dead. Let me pass on now to 2 other matters. One is the question of politics. I will save that for the last. But the other is a problem which is very delicate, very serious, but very delicate. In industrial plants, in state offices, city offices, where union members work, the strategy of management, and I'm not talking now about nickels, about money, is to subordinate the worker and to treat anyone who is critical, anyone who is insubordinate, as an outlaw. I don't know your situation, but in the United States of America at large, the workplace for many people has become increasingly authoritarian. The protections that we have as in the contract and union members have enjoyed because of representation are being whittled away, and people are operating on the basis of fear. Isn't it about time that our unions take a careful look at the public as well as the private labor relations, the law, national labor relations law and state labor relations laws, and begin to ask seriously the question, can we tolerate a situation where people do not have the right to strike? In public employment, we don't have those rights. In most private contracts, we don't have those rights. As a matter of fact, I'll go one step further and think about this. I know it's a little hard to think about all these things at once, but think about this for a little bit. The American system of justice is based on the concept that you are innocent until proven guilty. Is that right? I mean, that's the foundation of our system of justice. The presumption is the presumption of innocence, except in one place, 2 places, the prison and the workplace. At the workplace, you are guilty until proven innocent. They can suspend you. The employer can fire you. You have a right to grieve after the fact. That's not only true in private employment, it's true in public employment. What I'm asking, and it's getting late and I'm going to try to end soon because I got one more big area, is that we begin to take a look at the law and also take a look at the whole system of labor relations to see whether or not this is just. You cannot have a citizenry in the workplace unless workers feel free to complain about their working conditions, about their conditions of labor. You cannot have a situation where they do not have any rights. And the rights are continually being whittled away and taken away, and to a large extent the unions seem in many cases to be, if not helpless, we are clearly on the defensive. And I'm speaking about my own situation where we now have boards of trustees of our university making decisions on curriculum when those are the faculty prerogatives, taking away our full-time jobs and replacing us with part-time people and so on. These are big issues. Where is the good news, the real good news, though? There is a lot of good news about organizing. If there is anything that Sweeney has done and the labor movement has done that was not really put to the forefront before, it has been the emphasis in almost every union on organizing the unorganized on the premise that the general standard of living of the American people can only be increased if labor's density, which means their proportion of union members to the general labor force, increases dramatically. That seems to be a no-brainer. And indeed, the Organizing Institute, which has been conducted over successive summers, the bringing in of new young people into organizing, the emphasis on organizing in several of our major international unions, and two of them are here, well represented, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees and the Service Employees International Union, have been exemplary in terms of organizing progress. There are several industrial unions, the older labor movement, that have done similar organizing. I can mention the machinists and the communications workers who've organized among airlines workers, and especially Unite, the unions of needle trades, textile employees, which has a great potential victory in the largest textile mill in the South in the country, Fieldcrest Mills. It's not clear yet as to whether they've got that victory, but they've been organizing, and they've been organizing very aggressively. The old labor movement, the labor movement of Mother Jones, always addressed working people on the concept of the downtrodden. And we came to understand that the people who could organize unions were of two types. One were the highly skilled workers who usually organized into craft unions, and the others were people like janitors and people like miners and people like semi-skilled and unskilled industrial workers. They still are a very vital part of the labor movement. But the new labor movement, the one that is emerging, is exemplified by what happened at the American Medical Association convention, where the doctors passed a resolution supporting trade unionism. Can you imagine the AMA supporting trade unionism? Well, they did. And now the Service Employees International Union has 10, 11, I think now, affiliate of doctors' unions working in hospitals. What happened to doctors? The second piece of good news, second piece of very good news. If you would ask, what is the great anti-union bastion in the United States? One of the major corporations that survived the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 70s, the 80s. You would say Big Blue, wouldn't you? You'd say IBM. Well, the Communications Workers of America have a campaign now that seems to be getting somewhere in IBM. And why are they getting somewhere? For two reasons. The first one is because IBM workers have understood that all this promise about a job forever is caca. That's, by the way, an East Harlem term. I don't know whether you've ever heard it. It's baloney. They were laying people off like it was going out of style and giving them packages of sweeteners to get them out of the plant and get them out of the offices and the engineering sections. The second reason is, can you imagine? This company takes a pension plan. I mean, a pension plan, and says, we're changing the terms of the pension plan. You think you got a pension that's based on such and such a calculation? No, 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 no. You now have a pension plan that's worth 25% less than we said it was worth. Now, if there was ever a workforce that has its nose up the backside of the corporation, it was the IBM workforce. In fact, they didn't know where the nose ended and the backside of the corporation began. The point, obviously, of these two stories about doctors and of IBM workers is that we are likely to see, in addition to the kind of fight that's being taken by the Unite and by the anti-sweatshop movement and the justice for janitors and organizing clerical workers and organizing blue-collar workers in the public sector, we are going to see what has been considered to be the creme de la creme, the middle class of American society, the salaried middle class of American society, will now become a militant working class. They're going to become our brothers and our sisters. What I'm suggesting, brothers and sisters, is that I think we're at this, this moment. We don't get moments very often. Year 2000, it's something. We could take it as an occasion to look around and say, hey, where can we do more and where can we do better? And one of the places we can do better is an independent political action, because it would be under those circumstances where we are not committed desperately to support a snake because we don't like the other person who's a scorpion, you know what I'm saying? That we can say, we have an agenda. The agenda is America needs a raise. We have to raise the bottom. The agenda is we need new laws that allow people to organize without the threat of being fired and discharged and so on. That we need to repeal welfare reform, that we need to repeal NAFTA, that we need a new trade policy. And so I think that if we were going to do anything, we at least could take whatever we had as a program and make it public. What I sense, however, at this point, in the most positive sense, is that there's more receptivity to having a conversation about these things. And the greatest achievement of this regime of the AFL-CIO is that this kind of conversation can now take place. And I hope in your workplaces, in your unions, you will have it in the near future. Thank you very much.